How you doing? My name is Mario Choice, and welcome to the Seeds of Hope. The Seeds of Hope podcast is here because of all the negativity in the world, and this is our way of sowing seeds of hope into the community. Positivity and affirmation, things you can look forward to from this podcast. And today, I have the privilege and honor of interviewing the founder of Hope Forum, a very noble man, ironically. His name is Noble Crawford. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you.
That's good. You look good.
It's an honor to be here.
Well, I appreciate that. Well, I got a lot that I want to tell people about you, but I know we have just a short period of time. But Mr. Crawford, if you could just tell them before I get into it, because I'll take up the whole interview talking about you, because that's how I feel about you. You're a great person. But just tell us about your upbringing, where you grew up, what city you're from, and.
I was born in Alabama. I was born in a place called Eufaula, Alabama.
Yeah, Eufaula.
And that's where my parents are from. We moved to Tampa, Florida when I was 5 years old. And every summer when school was out, my brother and I were sent back to the country because my grandparents owned a farm that we went to. And so I grew up a lot of my years on the farm. And that's where I got my love for outdoors at. At heart, I'm a country boy. At heart.
Yeah.
But that was part of my upbringing.
So here it is. You moved to Florida. You graduated from high school. What happens next?
I graduated from high school in '66. We were right in the middle of the integration era. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, the year that I graduated, I think that was the last year that you could go to an all-black school because of busing. Mm-hmm. And so I left home, and because during the Vietnam era, so I left home and went to the Air Force. And I came back from not basic training, but my training in the Air Force. I came home in '69, got married to my wife, May. Then I was home for maybe, 2 weeks. She knows the exact number of days and hours that I was home. Then I was shipped to South Korea. And so I was in South Korea for like 13 months. But while I was over there, I had one of my brothers pass away, and I had come home on emergency leave. And that was when my wife and when she conceived our first child, who was born in 1970. So that was kind of the beginning of creating a family.
Yeah.
And so when I got out of the Air Force, in Abilene, Texas. Let me back up for a minute. The most significant thing that happened to me while I was in the Air Force is coming to know Christ.
Yeah.
Because I had a brother over there in South Korea to explain the gospel to me, and I'd never had anybody do that before. Mm-hmm. Totally changed my life. So I went away kind of a bad guy. I came back a good guy. So that was my highlight in that. In the Air Force.
You said bad guy. I don't know, Miss Crawford. I can't see you being a bad guy, man. I just don't see that.
Just trust me.
That's a good thing that I can see. But I'm gonna back up a little bit. I just want to you said you were right in the middle of the civil rights and segregation. Do you remember anything that you said, something that I don't want to say traumatizing, but something that was so memorable dealing with segregation and civil rights that you say, I remember that to this day?
Well, we lived in the projects, and my parents bought the first house in an area that was predominantly white. And one of the other families that lived in the projects had already moved to this subdivision. They had a cross burned in their yard. I had to walk, when I got out of school, I had to walk from maybe 3 blocks, from the bus stop to home, and there were like white guys in that neighborhood that would ride around and harass the black kids, and they would just pull up beside you and just call you nigger. It was pretty traumatic for me because I'm outnumbered here. I don't know what they're gonna do, and so we had experiences like that. And another one was when I was working a part-time job after I got out of high school, and I had a couple of white friends, and we went to one of these silver diners after we got off from work. And It was me, Wesley, and Kobe. Kobe was a tall white female, and she was a waitress. And we were together. So we went into this diner, and I could feel the stares. And then they started talking out loud. And I said, Wesley, we need to get out of here. And Wesley said, we got a right to be here. I said, Wesley, we need to leave. Yeah. And so we finally left, But racism was really, really thick back then, not just in civilian life, but it was in the military as well. So
yeah. And so you went to the Air Force. You go over to South Korea, and then you say you were in Abilene, correct?
My last duty station was Abilene, Texas, and I discharged while I was in Abilene, and we decided to come in to Denton, Texas, so that I could finish school at the University of North Texas at that time. At that time, it was North Texas State.
Yeah.
And so we moved to Denton because we had met this family from Denton. Mm-hmm. And they were there, and we still know them to this day. They're like extended family to us. And so I went to school for maybe 3 years before I got my degree. Mm-hmm. And then worked for a while, not just for a while, but I went to Sears right after I graduated. And after that, I worked for this company called Oil Well. It was during the oil boom in Texas.
Yeah.
And then we eventually moved back to Denton because I wanted to go to graduate school to get a counseling degree, which that didn't work out because I didn't really like the subject matter. But during all of that period of time, we were associated with this organization called the Navigators because it was through their ministry that I became a Christian when I was in South Korea.
Yeah.
And we were not part of the local church. Eventually what happened is I found out about Dr. Tony Evans at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. This was in the very early days of Oak Cliff. Yeah. And so we decided to commute from Denton to Dallas just to see what this man was about. And he's the first black pastor that I knew of that ever explained the scriptures in a way that I totally understood what he was saying. And it's just, and I was just hungry and thirsty for that. And so, but we went there for a while, and then we went to another Bible church. We got really hung up on Bible churches because we really liked the teaching. Yeah. And so that impacted our lives as well.
Yeah. So how did you get to Fort Worth?
After I didn't go to graduate school, I said, you know what? I just need to get a job and support my family because every time I have a dream, my wife says she supports it. And I go from one dream to another. So then I had a guy here in Denton. He was a trooper that said, you ought to come to the Department of Public Safety. So I did. I joined. And I almost didn't make it because the cutoff was 35 years of age. And I was almost 35 years of age. So went to the academy in Austin and became a trooper in 1982 and worked in Fort Worth out of the academy and then Louisville. And we were still staying in Denton at the time. But eventually what happened was I became a criminal investigator after working in Highway Patrol for a short period of time. They sent me to Houston, and an opening came in Hurst, here in Tarrant County. So I took that opening, and we've been in Tarrant County, in the Fort Worth, the Dallas-Fort Worth area ever since.
Ever since then. Man, this time is moving so fast. I got to make sure we get to this. Hope Forum. Noble Crawford is one of the co-founders of Hope Forum. How did it even come about? I know the history, but I want the people to hear the history. How did it even come about?
Well, Gary Randall, who worked for the Fort Worth Police Department, and he was going to Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship the same time I was. Matter of fact, we didn't even know each other. But we winded up meeting each other because we were both volunteering to be security officers at the church. And in the course of time, what we found out is that we both had a burden for young men who were, because I was still in law enforcement. We both had a burden for young men who were being incarcerated, and they all they had was public defenders. Their parents couldn't afford attorneys, so they wind up going to jail. And others that didn't make it to jail, they were being shot because gang activity was very high, drug activity was very high, and we were losing a lot of our young people. And that was a burden on my heart. And I believe God put that burden there. He did the same thing with Gary. And so in the course of time, Gary and I just decided, hey, we need to do something about this. So by that time, I was in Fort Worth quite a bit, with my job. And so Gary and I started talking about Hope Ranch, started talking about a concept to have kids move out of the city into a rural area and just raise them in a rural area. Well, we didn't know what we were doing because we'd never done it before. We knew law enforcement, but we did not know nonprofit work and nonprofit ministry. And so eventually what happened is we wound up getting this property here at the corner of Evans and Atlanta at the time. And because it used to be Atlanta and Ramsey, but now it's just Ramsey. Yeah. And we eventually bought this property after the Lord provided a $100,000 grant, which was unheard of. That was a miracle right there, And we, in the meantime, before we had a building, what we would do is go to Morningside Elementary and spend time with the kids in the lunchroom, in the classroom, and we were there for the boys, but the girls wanted our attention just as much as the boys did. Yeah. And eventually what happened, we purchased this property on the corner of Evans and Ramsey, and we started, I think it was probably 97 that we started meeting there, and we got our first kids from Morningside Elementary. And of course, it's been growing since, because when we first moved into this block, we just had those 3 buildings. Yeah. And they were all frame buildings. We didn't even have the what we call the Family Life Center. That's building A. We didn't even have that. Yeah. Over time, we purchased all the property in the block, and we started expanding. And then as we continued to grow and our identity continued to be confirmed in the community, we went and purchased property in Como for the second campus. And then eventually we winded up going to South Dallas and starting that campus as well. So that's how we've grown, and it just seems like a flash to me, because I retired and Gary retired in 2018. I retired in 2020, and so I'm delighted to see that Hope Farm is still going, still growing, and I fully expect it to continue to multiply.
Yeah, and that's funny. You kind of segue into my question. I'm like, from seeing where it started to looking at it right now, does it like overwhelm you? Like, oh my goodness, this is what God is doing.
There was no way that we could imagine the extent to which this vision would grow, and it's still growing. I think it's going to be even much bigger than it is now. When I was talking to Darian earlier, he was telling me that he has 4 of the boys who really, really, really love audiovisual, and they're really learning well. Who knows what God is going to do with that? With those kids when they're older. So I don't put God in a box. Yeah. I just believe that God is not about addition. He's about multiplication. Yeah. And so I just believe he's going to continue to multiply the vision.
Yeah, good deal. This time has went by so fast. I try to give you guys as much as Mr. Crawford's wisdom that you can get. 20 minutes of wisdom, the co-founder of Hope Farm. All of this was happening right now. Me doing what I'm doing right now is because this man right here and his vision. Very thankful to have you on the show. We're going to have you on it again because we got to do an hour next time.
Okay.
We got to do an hour next time. And so, hey, I thank you guys. Thank you so much. Hey, I thank you guys for watching Seeds of Hope. I hope we said something that gave you some hope. God bless you.